Hey guys, and welcome to this video. Today we are gonna take a look at how to draw a Medusa portrait using a black pen and pencil. Like every other tutorial of mine, this one is meant for everybody, no matter what stage of drawing skills you are at. So, without further ado, let's begin. First of all, I lined out Medusa's face. I won't go into detail here, since I've already made a tutorial about how to draw faces step for step, and another clip about facial proportions. And even though I feel like her face turned out good, I'm not totally happy or satisfied with the result. So I'm gonna link these two tutorials for drawing faces down below. Now onto the main part or heart of this portrait, Medusa's snake hair. As you can see, I just started drawing a few wavy curly lines, similar to the prominent strands of hair in my reference picture. With prominent strands of hair, I mean the hair strands forming the hair's flow, movement and shape, shown as these purple lines in the picture. If this part feels a little bit too tricky, or it's hard for you to get these curly lines right, which already partly sketch out these snakes, it might be easier to sketch out these prominent hair strands like they are in the reference picture first, before adjusting them and turning them into these snake-like forms. However, to be able to plan how these snakes would slither around Medusa's neck and shoulders, I had to draw these first. In this case, the shoulders grow out from the neck in a soft, sloping curve, until they turn into a slightly rising curve around the shoulder's middle point, where the joints would be. Also, each shoulder is approximately or more or less as broad as the face. Once I've drawn the left shoulder, I worked on the neck and lined out the sternocleidomastoids. And if you've never heard of that term before, that's totally fine, because I didn't either and know nothing about them but their name, with their triangle-like space in between. Then I lined out the right shoulder, with its joint being located much higher than the left one due to the position Medusa's head is in. Because whenever someone turns their head to one side, usually the shoulder on the same side dips down, while the opposite shoulder rises up. Additionally, I added the collarbones, leading from the sternocleidomastoids to the shoulders in a slightly bowed shape. Last but not least, I sketched out the remaining curly lines similar to the prominent hair strands on the other side, which again already form the snake's shapes. Then, once we've laid down the basic flow or movement of the hair, I began completing the snakes we've already partly sketched out. Therefore, I picked one of the upper, outest snakes to begin with. Now, for those who may not be familiar with the basic anatomy of a snake's body, let's take a short look at that subject. As you can see, a snake's body is quite thin and sharp at its tail, and becomes thicker and broader towards the upper middle part, where it's the largest. It becomes thinner again towards the snake's head, its shape similar to a somewhat angular almond. Also, when a serpent curls up like this one does at 2 spots, their body may be slightly thicker around that curl, depending on how tight or loose that curl is. Basically, these are the 2 most important anatomical aspects to keep in mind to get these serpents' bodies right. And since we want our snakes to be lively and to interact with each other, in order to make them seem more real, I tried to make most of them curl up at some point and let them slither around, beneath or on top of each other. Additionally, drawing them in different sizes and lengths helps to make them stand out from each other and brings in variety. Now onto the drawing part again. So, as you can see, I wanted this snake to curl up as well, right at the bottom, so to say, where it disappears beneath its sibling. When completing that snake by adding the inner outline, try to replicate the flow or form of the outer outline we've drawn at the beginning. When doing so, keep in mind to make the body slightly thicker around that curl and thinner around the upper body, where the serpent crawls out from another sibling. It doesn't have to be perfect, since I didn't want these snakes to be for now, and went over most of them again later on, once I had sketched all of them out. Then I worked on the next smaller snake below the first one and made its neck curl up. Next, I began drawing the small snake slithering out from beneath Medusa's forehead, and again, make its body thinner towards the head, and thicker again where it grows out from beneath the girl's forehead, where it would be curled up. Because I wanted this fellow to be interrupted by the larger sibling right there, I quickly turned to said sibling. Let it slither over the small serpent and erase that part of the serpent's outline. Then I began creating the snake below these 2, but quickly turned to the small snake again, starting with its thin tail and making it thicker again towards the middle part of the body, before finishing the larger sibling. Next, I added one of the very small fine snakes, crawling over other serpents, and completed the fellow we drew after the outer large one. And then you just continue drawing one snake after the other. You can't do much wrong when doing so, since snakes have pretty simple flowing bodies. Just keep the 2 anatomical aspects in mind we've talked about a few minutes ago, and start with the upper snakes, lying more on top before adding the lower ones. Try to include as much curls and wavy shapes as possible, and draw them in different sizes and lengths, since hair strands also come in various lengths and levels of thickness, and make them interact with each other. Also, there is no shame in needing a few tries until one is satisfied with their drawings. As you might have noticed, I am somewhat of an expert in that matter myself. When you get to these snakes growing down towards Medusa's neck and shoulders, make them slither over these two, and let one or two come up from behind her shoulders and partly cover them. Additionally, it's really important to make the tails, where the snakes grow from Medusa's head, quite thin and delicate, to make them look more similar to hair roots and to make them larger as they grow. Now, there's one last tip which might be helpful, especially if you struggle to get the body proportions right around the areas where a snake is interrupted by another and where serpents curl up. I've already drawn the lower and middle part of the snake, on which I want to show you this trick on in the beginning. So, next I worked on the upper body, that's gonna be curled up in two places. I began sketching out the serpent's head and dragged the line downwards in a curve, until where the snake would curl up for the first time. Then I completed the other side of the neck and added that small swerve, so to say, forming the inner outline of the curl. Additionally, I added another swerve, which is gonna be part of the little hole in the second curl, which the snake's body doesn't fill out, and completed the first curl. And now comes the little trick I was talking about, because to know where exactly the serpent's body would continue after it is interrupted by its own curl, and to connect these two lines with each other, you can either eyeball where to position your pencil, or just position the pencil before the curl, right at the spot where the serpent's body is interrupted, and continue the line, drawing over that curl until you meet the other line. Just don't put too much pressure on the pencil when drawing over that curl, so that it can be easily erased again, once you've completed that part. Again, make the body thicker around both curls, especially at the first one, since this one is much tighter than the other curl. Last but not least, I worked on the snake's scale patterns. I decided to use 5 different patterns. One with no specific pattern at all, so I left several snakes bare, a hooped pattern, a tie-like one, a dotted and a leopard-like one. Concerning the hooped one, well, basically I drew such bar-like forms with regular gaps in between. Keep in mind to make these bars and gaps smaller towards the thinner parts of the serpent's body, like the head or tail. Next, I added the tie-like pattern by laying a grid on the snake. Regarding the leopard-like pattern, I adorned the serpent with these very irregular and unique splatters, with most of them having such 3 little spaces in their middle. And last but not least, for the dotted pattern, just draw irregular blobs on the snake's body